Chet Holmgren, and I'm down to dunk.
This is AJ Mitchell, and I'm down to dunk.
This is Alex Crusoe, and I'm down to dunk.
It's like baby bottle pop. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. This is Adam Flagler, and I'm down to dunk.
Hey, it's Isaiah Hartenstein, and I'm down to dunk.
This is Cason Wallace, and I'm down to dunk.
I can't spell Lucas. Hey, how do you spell Lucas? How do you spell Lucas?
This is Lou Dort, and I'm down to Dort.
This is Nikola Topic, and I'm down to dunk.
This is Dylan Jones, and I'm down to dunk. This is Isaiah Joe, and I'm down to dunk.
And there's probably like 50 to 75 Beanie Babies.
Give me like your top 3 Pokemon.
Brother, I can't even name.
This is Jay Will, and I'm down to dunk.
Sometimes the way his brain works is it leaves a lot to be desired. This is Kenrich Williams, and I'm down to dunk.
Charmander.
Yeah.
Charmander. Or you're more of a Charmeleon guy.
Charmeleon.
This is Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, and I'm down to dunk.
Schlecht. You know what it means? Yeah.
That means like bad.
It means bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's me.
Well, it was a good interview, so it wasn't bad.
J-Dub, year 3, and I'm down to dunk for the 3rd time. Thank you.
Welcome to Down to Dunk. I'm your host, Andrew Schlecht. We're part of the Athletic Podcast Network. With me, as always, on Wednesdays is my good friend, Alex Spears. Alex, what's up?
What's up, Andrew?
I mean, my co-host, Barry White. No, Alex is sick. I'm
sick.
I'm gimpy in my bedroom right now, not recording in my regular space because like the way that the Down to Dunk desk is in my office, it's just really hard to sit at with my leg like it is, and so sitting at a new desk that again, listener and friend Alex Bolerjack put together for me. Shout out to Alex for that. So this is
it's been a rough couple weeks for Down to Dunk.
Rough few weeks for DTD. So I think we have to start with this De'Aaron Fox stuff, right? Like I think like that's like the biggest news going around right now that could shape not only like we're going to talk about like the future of the Western Conference, but just shape the future of the West and also maybe the immediate future of the West. Thoughts on Fox and like potential destinations that you like for him?
Well, let me ask you to start. Is your understanding that he was always going to leave Sacramento? Or do you think this is specifically like the Kings don't want to pay him the full max type of situation?
This to me is that he has turned down extensions from them.
Okay.
And that he does not want to stay in Sacramento long term is the way that I read it, because he's had multiple chances to sign extensions with them and he's refused to do that. Amick reported yesterday about it, just saying that, that basically Clutch has told the Kings like, hey, you should trade this guy sooner than later, almost like as like a favor to the Kings, because they know that like now you can get a lot more for him than even if you waited till the summer, than if you waited till next trade deadline to do it, because you don't get the year with him. And so I think the Clutch is in some way like saying like, hey, you better do it, because like he's not staying here.
Man, it's obviously you feel bad for Kings fans. It feels like anytime they get a little momentum, anytime anything starts being good, there has to be like an equal and opposite reaction in the negative way. I mean, the fact that this is happening, if this had happened, if this story had come out a month ago, you're like, oh yeah, this makes perfect sense. This team's falling apart. Like
totally.
They're not anywhere near the play-in. And now like they've gone on this little run. They have a new coach. Like it felt like the vibes were good. And so that makes me feel like, well, then obviously they knew this way before this.
Yeah.
And so what were they doing last summer? Like why, if you knew this going into the season, why did you continue? Why did you make the DeRozan move? Like what was
that? That is a great question. I mean, that to me just tells me that they're the same organization. Like they haven't changed a bit. You know what I mean? Since all the Kang stuff.
Like if this was a normal ownership group and you were looking at this situation, why would you let this front office make this decision?
Yeah,
Because
I know.
if you're Monty, what is his name? I've almost said
Monty
Monty.
McNair.
Monty McNair. Like, you're trying to save your job at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And my sense is that that would involve a De'Aaron Fox trade where you're trying to like just kind of stabilize things. Like you're out there trying to look for rotation players.
Oh boy.
And I think long term, if you look at the West, like it would make a lot of sense if they did do a deal with San Antonio, for instance. Like if you could get, I mean, I was going through, so we're doing this West Future rankings, and I was just listing out everyone's picks, and San Antonio has way more than I remembered.
Yeah, they got a ton.
Yeah, and so I would want to do some picks based package, but if you do that, then it's like, well, we got it. You might as well trade Sabonis at this point.
Yeah, definitely.
And so I feel for Kings fans because I feel like this is headed towards not really a resolution. Like they're not really going to pick a path in the sense that they're not going to get better from a De'Aaron Fox trade. Probably. Although you could say that now that they brought in DeRozan, they've shown themselves to kind of be better when one of these guys is missing. Like it doesn't fit as currently constructed. So maybe it is possible that they make a deal and they just kind of continue this good vibes for the season, but they're never going to have like the high ceiling that you would hope for as a Kings fan. But again, I feel like this is more of a failure of this front office. And I wouldn't want them leading this next era of the Kings.
Yeah. And part of it is like the trickle down from ownership to the front office is like there's obvious disconnect that exists there at times. There's obvious, this ownership group has not been great for Sacramento, as far as like leadership of the direction of the basketball team. And so they have big problems. And if you're Sacramento, like I don't know that they could get as much as the Thunder did, with the start of their rebuild, but you could get a lot for Fox. You could get a lot for Sabonis, on the trade market.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a minute since there's been like a star, like a guy who made an all-star team that's been very available. I know people will say Jimmy Butler, but like a guy in his prime, Fox is only 27.
A guy that you would like to sign an extension for. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And you look back, obviously everyone is focused, like hyper focused on the Spurs right now. But we've seen like Donovan Mitchell. Everyone assumed he was going to the Knicks. He ends up going to the Cavs, signing like an extension with them. Everything worked out. We saw it with Paul George. Now, obviously, he didn't stay long term with OKC, but
I'm here to stay. Lakers. I'm here to stay, everyone.
He was.
Don't worry.
For at
here
least
to
2
stay.
years. But sign the next deal, which made everything worth it for OKC. I think the Spurs are the obvious one, and they have the obvious like assets to do this deal. But I forget who it was that reported. Oh, it was Shams saying that they got like dozens of calls after that report came out. So I just wonder who the other teams would be. They would say, you know what, we'll just take a risk on this because you're getting them for a year and a half. So you have a year and a half to kind of convince him to stay long term. And we've seen that can work. It used to be a type of thing when we would talk about this, it would be like, why would a team be so stupid to trade for a guy who we know wants to go somewhere else? But it's worked out enough in these last couple of years that it's kind of like, well, if you don't have a better option and there's not a clear second star that's going to come available later, maybe it's worth doing.
Would you do it if you were San Antonio? Would this be something? Would this be where you spent your picks?
Well, I just wonder what it would cost, because like I'd almost be more inclined to trade Stephon Castle.
You would?
Yeah, just because I don't like.
Wow.
I don't like the idea of that backcourt, Stephon Castle and De'Aaron Fox.
Yeah, it's not. They're neither of them are like supreme shooters, which
like
is
De'Aaron Fox and Devin Vassell makes way more sense together. And if you're trading for De'Aaron Fox, you're trying to be good now. Like you're going to get significantly better right now. So, and I'm just not as big of a Stephon Castle guy. I know that you really like him, but
I like him a lot. Yeah.
I just keep coming back to the shooting. Like it as a guard, like the number of guards in this league that are elite and aren't good shooters is just so small. Whereas like if you're a big or even a wing, like as we've seen with Amen Thompson, like you can get away with it if you have something else. Like Amen Thompson is like a nuclear athlete. He can get away with not having a shot. And it's kind of like a thing where he's already good. He's already awesome without a shot. And if he did get a shot, oh my gosh. With Stephon Castle, like to reach the level of De'Aaron Fox, like that level of star, like that still feels to me like a small percent chance.
Yeah.
So I'd almost be more
It's
inclined.
probably true. Yeah. I just think he's more versatile. I just think he's 6'6". He can guard multiple positions. He's a good passer. I just think like he's like a do-it-all guard. And like, yes, the shooting is a problem. And I guess the good thing is like he is willing to take them. He's not like a guy who just like doesn't take threes, but he's got a ways to go. There's no question. And this is why I might wait, just because Wemby is still, what is Wemby, 21?
He is.
22.
That's correct.
Like I just might wait before I'm trading for a guy who is pretty reliant on his speed at, and he's only 27. I get that. Like should have many years left. But like sometimes these like smaller guards that are reliant on speed or athleticism, like it can just go away so fast. Like you hit 31 years old and it's just gone. And you have him signed to a max contract and he's already slowing down. Like that to me would worry me. I'd rather find other guys that are like on Wemby's timeline to like grow with him.
Yeah, I do think Wemby is unique in that it's kind of the Luka thing where he's so good that you should kind of feel pressure to put something together now.
Yeah.
Like if they did just have like a solid team around him. Like De'Aaron Fox, he's a one-time All-Star. If he stays in the West, I don't expect him to like make a ton of more All-Star games. He's kind of like in that Jamal Murray range. If you just had one of those players and maybe like one other guy, I feel like this team could compete for like a top 6 seed pretty quickly.
Yeah. And
for all the talk about OKC back in the day, where it was like, oh my gosh, they're wasting these prime years of Shea. Like even back then, people were talking about Shea as like a top 30 player, Yeah. Like people are talking about Wemby right now as like he's top 10 right now. He might be top 5 right now. And that to me is such a different conversation. Like if you think you have a top 10 player right now, who cares how old he is? He's one of the 10 best players in the league. So for me, it is a slightly different conversation than it was for OKC, because back then, like, yeah, if we had this version of Shea, like MVP Shea on those old teams, it would have felt weird. And he was obviously a very good player back then, but he has gone up levels since then.
Oh yeah.
I feel like with the Spurs, like you could imagine as soon as next season, he is like clearly a top 5 player in this league. And at that point, if you're still slow playing it, like why? What are you waiting? What are you still playing it for?
Yeah, it's not slow playing it. It's like it's just not just jumping at the first thing that says I would like to be there.
Right.
I just think that there are other ways to handle it. Like even like talking about Luka and how you need to do this. Like they have had, I would rather not cycle a roster around Wemby. I would like to have guys that can grow with him. That's my opinion. And like even with the Thunder, like people would say like even a year and a half ago, like the Thunder are slow playing this. They need to hit the trade button like right away. Like it doesn't, like just because you pick a certain strategy doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to like be faster or slower. Like you could get De'Aaron Fox and it could still take a while before you are like a bona fide contender, And so I just wonder, to me, I would rather have a team of guys that can grow around Victor that can be sustainable rather than like what Dallas has done, where it has been like a revolving door of players that have come in and out. And it's still going to be that because they have an aging Kyrie Irving. They just signed Klay Thompson, who's not going to be in the league for very long, who plays a big role for them. Like, it is going to continue to be a revolving door in Dallas. Like, I wouldn't want that for my star player. Like, I would rather have, some continuity. And I think my hunch is that that's the way the Spurs will go. Even if they do trade for Fox, like, you can still try to go and acquire guys that are more on his timeline and still try to build that way.
I think I get that point. I think it's really easy to say when we've seen how good of a drafting team OKC is.
Yeah.
I don't think the Spurs are that level of drafting team. Like, if they, I mean, you just look at the young players that they've surrounded Wemby with so far and who they've taken with those selections. Like, by this point, you look at Shea, even like last year, even maybe in like the season when they went 500 or just under 500. By the end of that season, it felt like most people were ranking like Chet and J-Dub like pretty high. I guess Chet didn't play that season, but people were still like ranking him pretty high in terms of like 25 players under 25. I don't know if any of the Spurs young players would rank particularly high right now. Like, you're right that like if they're gonna do this, they still need like one more big piece. Like, they need
they're not close.
chipper.
I mean, they're under 500. Like, they're not close. Yeah, I agree, and that's a good point too. Is like, do you trust this team to draft the right guys? I guess it's a legitimate question to ask yourself. Because,
and once again, like, they're not going to have a great pick this year. They have right now they have a 3% chance at the number one. They do have Atlanta's first, but Atlanta's not going to be awful this season. So they're going to have like more of those Utah Jazz picks, like in the 8 to 12 range or something. And it's just, you eventually got to hit like hard on one of those. Yeah. If OKC doesn't hit on J-Dub, this whole rebuild looks a little different.
I mean, a lot different.
Yeah.
It looks a lot different. I think J-Dub is even like being like underrated in some ways. I saw somebody put out a tweet about how like there's only like 3 young players that I would take over Amin Thompson right now. And it's, Wemby, Paolo, and then they said somebody else. I can't remember who it was. And like they even like put like honorable mention people, didn't even consider putting J-Dub's name there, which I think is insane. Yeah. Like, I think that is really stupid. And it was also like we had this day after he hit the game winner against Boston where it was like a rush to get to Twitter and like, let me tell you how much I like this guy and how much I have liked this guy. I just have to tell everybody that I have liked him more and for longer than everybody else. And let me tell you, I'm going to put the stakes this high and tell you where it is. And like, that's where people were. It's just like a product of social media. But I think like J-Dub like is such a huge part of why they are to this point. Like, if you removed him from this team, especially knowing that Chet has missed a full year and then he's going to miss like a half a year, with this team.
Yeah.
Like, they're not anywhere close because you think about, okay, well then who guards the 4s? Who is the second scorer? Who does all these things? Just putting some oos on it and moving forward. Yeah. I mean, it's just, he is such a huge part. And it shows like you can hit in like that 12 range too, but the Spurs have not, Sohan's a fine player. He's going to be in the NBA for a long time. I think Vassell is a good player that will be in the NBA for a long time. I think Castle is probably the guy with the highest potential that could hit, but like you said, like the shooting has to come around for that to be a reality for him. They just haven't quite hit yet. And, they have 2 picks. They have the Hawks pick in this draft as well, and so like they could hit in this one. They're going to have a couple chances too, but it's going to have to be in like the 10 to 15 range. And there are guys that are in that range every year that are really good players, and a lot of times there's all-stars that come from that range, but it's usually just one. And so you gotta hit. I mean, even like the Thunder are a product of hits after the top 10, for the most part, save for Chet. But okay, this is a half-baked trade idea that would take a lot of steps for it to become a reality. But let's say the Spurs do make a deal with the Kings and Chris Paul is included in the trade.
Okay.
And Chris Paul is like, hey, Sacramento, thanks, but no thanks. Do not bring me in. Buy me out. Let's say Chris Paul gets a buyout. Would you then want the Thunder to go after Chris Paul on the buyout market?
Sure. Yeah, why not?
Yeah. Doesn't that sound kind of awesome?
I know, but for Chris Paul, like, I don't know. I almost feel like if you go to the Kings, like you get another starting job, you've leveled up a little bit, at least in the standings. You just play with like a pick and roll partner with Sabonis. Like, what? I don't know. I think he might just do this Sacramento thing.
Oh, that would be so gross. I don't know. I was just thinking. I was talking to Brett Dawson and Ryland Stiles about this yesterday. I just thought, I was like, that is like a fun, half-baked buyout market idea that would take many steps for it to actually happen. It doesn't feel like it could actually happen, but it would be, because somebody was saying like, oh, what's a buyout guy that would be good for the Thunder? And I'm like, why bother is kind of like my first instinct. It's like, why bother? But he's like a unique person who has experience with the franchise, has experience with Shea and with Dort, and that could come in and, if he's plays 10 minutes off the bench as like your caretaker backup point guard, and it's like basically like an assistant coach. I mean, like that wouldn't be too shabby.
No, I wouldn't mind that. I think the only other name I've heard that like kind of makes sense would be Lonzo. I don't totally know why the Bulls would buy him out, but if that happened, he would kind of make sense in that role too, because you wouldn't have to play him a ton of minutes. He hasn't, he's not the player he once was in terms of, he's not going to be like a 35-minute per game starter, and I don't think that's the expectation right now. Like what is he averaging? Yeah, he's averaging like 20 minutes per game. Mm-hmm. But he's been like surprisingly solid, and I think he would be a pretty solid backup as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Lonzo would be interesting. I mean, he's definitely, as like a basketball player, has like the DNA of a Thunder guy.
Yeah.
Shoot, pass, dribble, plays hard, like gets in passing lanes, like he does all that stuff. Like he would be pretty interesting for OKC. But yeah, I just feel like we're gonna get past the trade deadline and the Bulls are gonna do nothing. Even though they have all these,
that's my
have
hope.
all these
that's
guys.
my prediction.
You hope that?
Yeah.
Why do you hope it?
Because they're just a miserable franchise, and I just it would confirm my priors about how big of losers they are.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, they just don't make trades. I mean, they made the Giddey trade, but like other than that, like they just really don't make trades. So it would be interesting if they just did nothing, because there are a lot of teams like people would like, other teams would like to have Vooch. I think other teams would like to have, Zach LaVine with the way that he's played this season. But they're content with mediocrity. There's no question. Okay, let's take a quick break. We'll come back and we are going to do the future rankings. And we're back after that quick break. Al, talk us through these future rankings, and we'll jump in. What's up?
I need to ask you first. How are you thinking about this as you went through? Like, was there a central question you were asking yourself?
Yeah, I mean, the questions that I ask myself are, who are the best players on the team, and like the age of these guys.
Big picture. When you think about ranking, I know we talked about like next 5 years.
Yeah,
but are you thinking like most likely to win a championship or to be a contender for a championship?
Oh, yeah, I mean, definitely, because I think that's where the Thunder are. Because like if we're trying to like see like the biggest threat to the Thunder are, these teams have to be like championship caliber teams.
Yeah.
In the next 5 years. Yeah.
Okay.
No question.
Because I originally started thinking like, what team would I want to be a fan of, but that's kind of a different question.
Mm,
And
yeah.
so I wanted to make sure I'm ranking it the same way you are. So
yeah.
most
Not
likely to
necessarily a
win.
fun team. Yeah. Not necessarily like the fun meter, but like who can actually like win this whole thing.
Okay. So did you rank? You ranked all 14?
I didn't rank all 14. I didn't know we were supposed to do all 14, but I can hop in. Like there's no question I can hop in.
Okay. Well then I did rank all 14, so I'll start at my 14 and we
Okay.
can kind of move up.
Yeah.
So I have a little document I did where
Uh-huh.
I listed like who their stars are and how old are they, their chances
Yeah.
at the number one pick, their own firsts that are out, and then other firsts that are coming in, and then I
Yeah.
have all of their cap sheets,
Yeah.
which I think is relevant for some of these. Okay,
Yeah, for sure.
14, Andrew. Future West rankings. I am going with actually. Okay, now that we talked about this, I'm actually going to go with the Kings.
Yeah.
I was going to do another team, but I'm actually going to do the Kings because some of these other teams have owners that will spend a lot of money. And even though they are screwed right now, there is a little window at the end of this 5-year period. And for this 5-year period, we're talking this year, 25, so
Mhm.
26, 27, 28, 29. But yeah, I just think the Kings, with their history and now with the Fox situation, and kind of knowing that they're never going to do like the right, they're never going to make the moves they would need to win a championship.
No.
At least
it's
until I
hopeless.
see it. It's always
Yeah.
just about like, can we raise our floor a little bit more?
Yeah.
So I'm going to put the Kings down there. You know, they have Sabonis, they have DeRozan, two older stars, assuming that they trade Fox.
Mhm.
I can't believe they traded. Learning about the Spurs pick war chest was pretty interesting. So they gave a 2031 swap to the Spurs as part of taking on Harrison Barnes so they could get DeRozan. Seems bad.
That is how you become the Kangs. It's like it's not in these, even in these like big moves. Like it's just like death by 1,000 cuts kind of thing with this team.
Yeah.
And they've done this for forever. Like they have always traded future for present.
Yeah.
And when you consistently do that, you're just in an awful spot. You're just in an awful spot.
Okay, the team I originally had last, but I bumped them up one spot. Number 13, I'm putting the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah, I have
We're
the
talking
Suns
about
pretty low too. Yeah.
The ability to win a title, because I think they're kind of like maxed out right now in terms of how close they're going to get to a title, and they're not good. They're a playing team. And they don't have the pieces now, unless you really like these kind of sad little firsts they got. They don't really have pieces to like add a significant piece. I feel like they have those firsts now. They could maybe get off of Nurkic's contract, you know, or maybe
that just feels so sad. It's like we made this trade that is definitely going to hurt us in the future just so that we can trade Yusuf Nurkic.
Well, I think it's true because, like, obviously you don't want to give up that 2031 just to get off of Yusuf Nurkic.
No, you don't.
But if it's a late first, you're like, oh, okay, maybe I would do that just to get rid, because it does go through next season.
Yeah.
I just think they're so screwed. They do have an opening coming up here in like a few seasons, but that would involve them not extending Kevin Durant, and maybe he doesn't. You know, Kevin Durant's old; he's 36 years old, so maybe they don't. But you know, even in the 27 season, when they would theoretically get off of KD's money, they still have $57 million for Bradley Beal. So their window to do something would be that 28-29 season, most likely. And their owner is willing to spend, which is great, but they just don't have the assets to like pull off the kind of moves that they're going to need to pull. They are going to get some picks in these next couple of years because some of these have to be swaps, but they're all like the worst of like 4 different teams. So none of them are going to be like great picks. So I just feel like they're screwed. So even though they have like a decent talent level now, long term, I just feel like they're screwed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Number 12, I put the Blazers. Now, the reason I put the Blazers this low is because of all the teams in the West. I have my little column that says stars, age. They are the only team that I could not think of anyone to put in that column.
Yeah.
No one.
To me, like the only reason I have the Blazers higher is just because they do stink, and they do have a chance to get a high pick.
I would agree, except they're screwing it up right now. They won again last night. They have 17 wins. Their percent chance of getting the number 1 pick is half of what it is for the Jazz and the Pelicans.
Yeah.
And so that's why I put them a little lower. Obviously, they could jump up. They've jumped up high before, like when they got the scoop pick. But like if they don't get a star, like they have nothing yet. They like you know, every time I go watch this team, like there are pieces that you like. I like Toumani Camara. I like Denny Avdia. Like Shaden Sharp seems cool. But like you still don't see like the plan. You know, you still can't. It's hard to look at the roster and imagine them being significantly better anytime soon.
Yeah, they're basically a star. They're like a real star away, because like they have, like you said, they have all these other pieces in place. They basically have a roster that's ready for a star, but they just don't have that piece.
And if they were truly tanking this season, then I would feel better about them.
Yeah.
But you know, they had a nice little streak before that Thunder game. They played really well in that Thunder game. Then they beat the Bucks last night. Like they're kind of doing the Toronto Raptors thing right now, where it's like, yeah, we should be solely focused on getting a good pick, but we're just going to keep winning. And I get it for the Blazers because it's like this is year 3 or 4 or whatever it is of them being terrible. But actually, it is year 4 because Sharp, Scoot, and Klingon. So this is year 4 of them getting a lottery pick. So they did theoretically need to show some progress this season, but
yeah. I actually have the Pelicans at 13 just because like I have zero faith that it doesn't even matter if they get the number 1 pick. Like I don't even care. Like I just don't have faith in like that franchise as a team that can do anything. Like they have proven it through time. They've had 2 number 1 picks in very good drafts, in drafts where people were like desperate to be the number 1 pick. They've done it twice. And it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. They've even like made good trades and like have acquired good players. Like they got Trey Murphy in the middle of the first round. Like they've gotten, you know, Jose Alvarado off the scrap heap. Like they've gotten good players, but like I just have no faith in that franchise to be like a competitive franchise, you know, in the next 5 years. Like definitely not. You know, so I have them very low. And like just because like they have this proven track record of like like they're not going to make any noise. Like if like the height of this is maybe that they get to round 2, you know. But I just don't believe in that franchise to get there. And like the other teams that I have at the back half are really just teams that are aging and like don't like like they're just sputtering out. So like I have the Kings at 14 as well, just because I don't believe that anytime soon that they're going to be competitive. I have the Pelicans at 13 for the same reasons, like just like bad franchises. Like I just don't think that these teams can win. And then I have Suns, Warriors, Lakers, Clippers next, just because I think like all those teams in the matter of months are going to not be contenders.
Yeah. The reason I put the Pelicans a little higher is because at least compared to like Portland, they like Trey Murphy's a better young player than anything on the Blazers right now.
Wow.
And like it is. The Blazers would rather have Trey Murphy than any other player on their team.
I don't know if I agree with that, but like that's not a crazy take. It's not a crazy take. Scoot has played better recently. Like
you would take him over Trey Murphy?
Listen, if it's just for today, like no.
It doesn't have to be for today.
I get it. I'm willing to see some of this through for the Blazers. That's all.
I mean, Trey is averaging over 20 points Like he jumped up from 15 last year. Like he's over.
Trey's a good player, but he's like not. He's never going to be anything more than like a third best player on a really good team, though.
And I would say that is the case with every player on the Blazers as well.
And you would know better. You've watched more Blazers basketball than I have.
I guess you can close
sad,
your eyes
man.
and pray and hope about Shaden Sharp. That would probably be the easiest answer, just because like he has shown athleticism, he has shown, shooting.
Yeah,
but yeah, and again, like me mentioning that doesn't even take into account that Zion is there, which I get. Like Zion's like a huge issue, but
yeah,
the combination of those things plus 14% lottery odds in comparison to the Blazers, who are at 7.5%. That's why I put them a little bit higher. But
yeah,
I get it. And they also don't have any picks outgoing, which is nice. Portland has this stupid pick that they will never get and is continuing to hamstring them until like 2028.
Yeah.
So annoying.
Yeah, that's brutal.
So my 11 and 10, Clippers and Warriors.
Yeah.
I originally had the Clippers a little bit higher just because Steve Ballmer is willing to pay, and I do think that matters.
Yeah.
But, realistically, it's going to take until like probably the 27 season at the earliest for them to start to rebuild. And I don't know if they're going to do that. I think they might just try to keep trading for something or adding another piece. 27 is the last season of Kawhi's deal where he'll be making $50 million. And then 28, 29 will be a very different Clippers team. And you could imagine a scenario where like maybe the perfect free agency class hits. They want to go to LA, new stadium, Steve Ballmer, and they do this whole thing again with other players. Maybe that works out, but that's like the one shot because they do not own their pick until 2030.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I was about to bring up the picks, and then like honestly, the Lakers are going to be in position probably around the same time to like take in free agents.
That's why I have the Lakers higher. Yeah.
Yeah.
Golden State, their issue for me is like their cap sheet right now, just that the fact that all three of Curry, Wiggins, and Draymond go out to the 27 season. So it's going to be hard to add to that core.
Yeah.
Not to add to that core, but just to like reset this team until like the 28 season.
It's over.
So yeah, it's over. I put Utah 9. I don't like Utah's current talent level at all, but they do have a lot of future picks.
They do.
Some of them are probably not going to be great because they get like the two best of Utah, Cleveland, and Minnesota for several years. They do have a top 4 Lakers pick in 27, which is nice, and they have that unprotected Phoenix pick in 31, which is very nice. They have Lauri Markkanen, who's good. They have a 14% chance of the number 1. That's something. They have to be better in 3 years than some of these other teams. They have to be better in 3 years than like the Warriors and the Clippers. Please.
Not dissimilar to what you talked about with San Antonio, and they actually might be worse with drafting. Let's say they don't get the number 1 pick. Like I do not trust that front office to draft. Like we've talked about this on this show, is that like they don't. Like, who do they have? Who do they have that you're like is gonna like is for sure gonna be on this team in 5 years?
And similar to the Spurs, it's kind of a consequence of them not committing to the tank. Like the Spurs tanked that one season when they got Wemby. Every other season, they've really just been like in this. I mean, I guess Stephon Castle, he was 4, right? So that was a legit tank. It was just a bad draft year. But so many of their other picks have been in like that 8 to 13 range. Yeah. And the same thing with the Jazz. So finally they're doing it. They're a team where if they got Cooper Flag, everything would look a lot different. You could start imagining them going up the standings relatively quickly. And they have the future assets. So I like that. But so maybe I even thinking about it now, maybe I put the Pelicans under them because I had the Pelicans next at 8 for all those reasons.
Okay.
And then I put the Lakers at 7, which originally I had the Lakers pretty low for understandable reasons. But just looking at their cap sheet, like they have nothing starting in 27. And we know that players like to go to the Lakers. Like maybe they'll go back into that baby Lakers era 2.0, you know, when they were drafting like Lonzo and D'Lo and Julius Randle. Maybe we'll see another era like that of Lakers basketball. But that was really an anomaly in terms of the history of Lakers franchise. Like there's usually like at least one star. So I give them a little bit of credit for that. And the fact that they've held on to their future picks matters to me. Like they're giving up this pick this year, and then they have that 27 going out to Utah. Outside of that, they have everything else. 28, 29, 30, 31, 26. So they still have a lot of their own picks available to them, which are picks that they have shown a willingness to spend in the past.
Yeah. And like Giannis is a free agent in 27. Like, what do the Bucks look like? Is he going to actually sign another extension in Milwaukee? Like, I don't know. Nikola Jokic is supposed to be like this 27 free agent class could be a crazy one. Like the amount of like star players that are free agents that year, like obviously like having Anthony Davis as a free agent there and like trying to lure somebody else to LA. Like it's AD, Giannis, Dame, Jokic, Towns could be a free agent that year. You know, Donovan Mitchell could be a free agent again that year. Trae Young is a free agent. You know, Luka could be a free agent. That's the year that Shea, if he doesn't sign his extension, could be a free agent. And like that, this list is going to not be like this. Even next summer, it's not going to be like this because a lot of these guys are going to sign extensions. Like Luka and Trae are on this list, and Shea. Like my assumption is that all three will sign extensions. You know, with their teams. So like this list will look different, but there is like this hope that that the Lakers front office is going to be sending messages to the agents of all these players that are going to be available and say, hey, listen, just so you're aware, if any of your young players or any of your, future free agent stars would like to be the guy who takes the torch from LeBron James in Los Angeles, it's available, and probably somebody will bite at it. Somebody always does. And so it'll be interesting to see what that looks like.
So I think there's a huge gap between those 8 teams and the top 6 teams. All those teams we just talked about, I think you have to look out to like 27 at the earliest, but more like 28 and 29 before you could imagine them being good again, like really good again. Yeah. And whereas these top 6 teams, you could imagine if like one move goes right, if they just get, lightning in a bottle, which we've seen happen with teams in the past, something could happen like dramatically. So 6, I had Minnesota.
Yep. That's who I have too.
They got Ant, and that's kind of all you need.
They have Ant. You worry about the rest of this, and it's already starting to fall apart. Obviously with the Cat trade is not worked for them. But then you have aging Rudy Gobert, aging Mike Conley, who have both had very down years compared to last year. And we've talked about this too on this show. It's they're really a lot of eggs in the Naz Reid, Jaden McDaniels basket. And they need those guys to get a lot better. They're already good players, but those to me are your 5th and 6th pieces. They're not your 2nd, 3rd pieces. So I think they certainly have a long way to go, especially once Gobert slows down even more and Conley's gone. And it's well, what do we do? They need Rob Dillingham basically to work out at this point.
Oh my God. I forgot. Do you remember what they traded for him? Do you know what it was?
It's a future unprotected pick, right?
It's not just that. It's also a future swap.
Oh, really?
I had forgotten. They did a top 1 protected swap in 30 and then an unprotected pick in 31.
Yeah.
Rob Dillingham.
Listen, I was not a Rob guy. And he may end up being good, but I was not a Rob guy just because his size, the amount of players that are his size in the NBA that become stars, it is just really difficult. Usually guys just don't. You can just bet against it almost every single time. and like once in a blue moon it will happen. But like they don't even feel like they can play the guy, right now with like the roster problems that they have. They play him sparingly. Yeah.
The one good thing they got going for them though
Mm-hmm.
is that crappy Detroit Pistons pick that we got in the Şengün deal, and that was then traded to the Knicks.
Mhm.
Or I guess it was traded. It was traded a lot of times.
Yeah.
It is now going to convey,
Wow.
and it's going to be
Shout
like
out
a
to the
pick in the
Pistons.
teens.
Wow.
Amazing. Would have never guessed.
I would not have guessed. Yeah, it's pretty.
Even if you
It's pretty
thought they were
wild.
going to be like get a little bit better, you probably would have still thought, okay, it'll be like 50-50 that you get it, and you probably won't get it. It'll be like 11 or 12.
Yeah, definitely. I would have thought like that. I would have bet this pick would be like 8th this year.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
they'll maybe improve, but not just historically bad anymore. Yeah.
Top 5.
Top five.
Memphis. I
That's
put
me
Memphis
too.
at 5. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have all their own picks. They have one interesting swap. They have a 2030 swap with Phoenix or
Mhm.
Washington. But they don't really have a ton of extra assets in the way that like Houston or San Antonio does. And they're a very good team. But you can tell by the fact that they're interested in Jimmy Butler. They know that they need something else to like really contend for a title. And they have the depth to like cobble together, a bunch of role player package for some star, but it's just hard to complete one of those deals when you don't have like a ton of juicy picks. Like you just have your own picks to trade in those deals. And there's always going to like Houston's can always beat them in a deal. Spurs can always beat them in a deal. OKC can always beat them in the deal. Utah can always beat them in a deal. So I just think it's going to be hard for them. It's going to have to be like a perfect storm where it's like the perfect guy. Maybe he's a little undervalued by other teams and it's just the perfect fit for Memphis. But it could happen because they already have a good infrastructure. They've got Ja, they've got Triple J, they've got Desmond Bane. So you could imagine it happening. And maybe one of their young players, like whether it's Gigi Jackson or Zach Edey, like maybe they make like a jump at some point. But
yeah,
it just feels like they're going to need to make a big trade in these next couple of years. And they're always going to be behind on it, compared to these other teams. So that's why I had them at 5.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Like the only saving grace for them in my mind is that like they have been good at drafting, for the most part.
Yeah.
And so I think like they've found guys, like they found Santi Aldama, at the end of the first round. He's a guy who's contributing at a pretty good level for them. And so like they could find like their next gem, so they could do it. But like when you get to the playoffs, like they're just a team that I think is a lot easier to plan for than some of these other teams.
Yeah. Yeah. Number 4, I have Houston. And really the differentiator for me is just that those top 3 teams have Wemby, Jokic, and Luka.
They have like real stars. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Houston just doesn't have that yet. Now, who knows? It may turn out to be Amen Thompson or Şengün, but they're not that level of player yet. Like, it doesn't feel like there's anyone on the Rockets' current roster that you could easily imagine being a top 5 player in the next 3 seasons. There's a couple guys who like, okay, maybe they could be like top 15, something like that. But in talking about a MVP candidate, I don't know if there's that player on the Rockets.
And I know like Amen is getting like a ton of like great pub right now, and like he deserves it. He's a good player, and he's going to be a really good player. But like people have gone a little overboard on him at this point. Like he's a very good player, but like you said, like he's not like this like number 1 guy on a team yet. Like the jumper is still a huge problem, for him. And so like they have some stuff to figure out. But like the Rockets are just like this. They're very interesting because they're a good team, but it's like night to night who the best player is. Like last night it was Jalen Green. It's Şengün at times. It was Amen against the Celtics. Like it just feels like and that's like shows like they have a pretty good culture that they can allow that to happen. Like he's had 7 20-point games this year. It's not like the guy has just like been just like crushing it all year long. Like he's clearly a good player, good at a lot of things, bad at shooting, which once you get to the playoffs, like I would really worry about like teams just like packing the paint for that guy and just like waiting for him to get to the rim, because like those are the things that you can plan for. Like those are the guys that you plan your defenses around in the playoffs, and things just change. And it's like he's got to change in that way, and I think that he can. Like he doesn't have awful touch. Like I think that he could potentially shoot it down the road. But I do think like to even say, like, you probably would get, I don't know, 4 or 5 different answers from people on like who the best player on the Rockets is going to be in the next 3 years. It could be a lot of different guys.
The good thing for them though is that they have some really good picks coming up, because they've got those Phoenix picks in 27 and 29. They have their pick this year too.
And that's the thing is that, and they're a team that is not going to be in on De'Aaron Fox, which in my opinion might be a mistake, because I think like he could be a really, really good piece for them. And they're clearly ready to compete now, and they have like a great infrastructure around him to like be very competitive. But yeah, like they're primed to make a run at Booker or Giannis or any of these guys that become available for sure, because like not only do they have the picks, but they have a ton of young players that like teams that are going to rebuild.
Having Reed Shepherd just like
just hanging around.
Yeah. Like you're not putting any miles on him. He's just, a lot of teams still like value him really highly.
Yeah. You see, he's on the G League team for the Rising Stars pool.
Oh, that's tight.
Did you also see that the NBA put out a release that said that Carson Wallace from the Oklahoma City Thunder is in the player pool?
For someone whose name is like, now that we know it, is like it's easy to say. It makes sense like phonetically when you look at it. The fact that we had like the whole like Kassan thing, and now people are calling him Carson. Like I feel like his name's pretty easy. Like
it's not that hard.
It shouldn't be that hard.
And I'll bet you he's over there saying, I don't care. Because like when we asked him, and I've said this on the pod many times, but it drove me absolutely insane that when I asked him, I was like, what do you prefer to be called? He's like, I don't really care.
Oh, that he didn't care.
Like, don't say that. It's going to lead to people calling you Carson. Don't do that.
Yeah. Okay. So the top 3.
Yep.
So it sounds like we agree on the top 3, which is Dallas, Denver, Spurs. Obviously, the Spurs one, you're projecting a little bit, but the reason why the Spurs are in this top 3 is because of Wemby and because of their picks. They can make any deal they want. If just real quickly, they have Atlanta and Chicago's pick this year, swap with Atlanta next year, 27 Atlanta, 28 Boston, top 1 swap, 30 Dallas and Minnesota, which is a swap, and then 31 Minnesota, 31 Sacramento, which is a swap.
Mm-hmm.
So they got some juicy ones, and maybe they don't look as juicy in a couple of years, kind of like how the 25 Clippers swap is not looking as juicy now. But right now, like they have the assets, they have young players they could include in a trade. I don't know if they have true blue chippers, but they have players who you could talk yourself into if you're another team. So it really just comes down to like, do you value like championship equity right now, like the next 2 seasons, or do you value it more in future seasons? Let me let this dog out. You can start talking.
Yeah, go let the dog out. I would probably value the Wemby thing higher, just because you've seen like what just having a competent franchise does for a generational player like him. I mean, how many times did Cleveland fumble the roster with LeBron, and yet they still were championship contenders? Like it just didn't matter, at some point. Now, they never got over the hump. They never actually won the thing until he came back and they had Kyrie, but like it doesn't take much. And so like this is my order for these 3 is I have Mavericks, Denver, and then San Antonio.
That was exactly my order.
dang it. Like, I just think the best player matters so much. And I think that Jokic is better than Luka. And I think that Wemby in the next 5 years is going to pass Jokic. And so like that to me is like how I would level all this out. Now, with all this said, like I still have the Thunder head and shoulders above all these teams just because they have every ingredient you could want, plus the picks, plus MVP candidate. They have everything that you could want, with a team. And I think that they have a team that is like poised to be dominant in these next 5 years. And so like I have the Thunder pretty well above all these teams, but San Antonio is the one that scares me the most. Like I think Denver is in a weird spot where it's like, yes, the Russ story has really been cool, I would say, but it's also terrifying that they needed that to happen, and like how much longer will that even be a thing? And then what do you do? Like, I just think that roster is a little bit in trouble. The Mavericks are a team that is constantly churning things in and out. Like I've said, like in 5 years, their roster, I think, will be completely different.
Well, dude, in 2 years, because in the 27 season, the only players they have, Luka, Clay, Najee Marshall, and Derek Lively. Those are the only players currently on their cap.
That Clay contract could, and I know it's not going to be it's not an astronomical number, but it could look pretty bad because he's not been very good this year.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, PJ Washington, Daniel Gafford, like, they're awesome right now. Like, those were amazing trades. They're also making like $14 million a year. Yeah. Will this roster look as good when PJ Washington is making like $20+ million a year and Daniel Gafford is making? They probably won't play Daniel Gafford at that point, but like they're going to have to pay PJ Washington, and they're going to have to decide what to do with Kyrie, who has a $43 million player option next season. And then he could be a free agent, but he's also going to be 35.
He's going to be 35.
And so they have to find that second star again. And they really got lucky with the Kyrie thing. The fact that they were able to get him for what they did and that it worked out the way it did. They're going to have to do that again because they don't have a ton of future picks, assets to trade. They traded away a lot of stuff. Their first pick that they can trade is 31. And that would be as a pick because the 30 is a swap. So they have like one pick and one swap that they could trade right now or at the end of the season. But like you said, like they're going to have to churn this roster again around Luka. And so betting on that versus, this Denver thing is kind of locked in and that feels like a negative right now, but at least you know what you're getting. Like I know that in 3 seasons, they're going to have Jokic, Jamal Murray, and Aaron Gordon. Yeah. Whereas with the Mavs, I have no idea what they're going to have.
Yeah, no clue.
Now, if you're picking for just like the next 2 seasons, I think you'd probably pick the Nuggets or the Mavs. The fact that the Mavs are having this weird season right now and you kind of take them out of it because they've got all these injuries makes me kind of lean Nuggets for like the next 2 seasons. But I think those back 3 seasons is where the potential of the Spurs becomes real. And it is a lot of projecting, admittedly. I just said like how it's nice that you can look 3 seasons in the future and know what you're getting with Denver. You really are just like betting on this Spurs front office to do something that they've really never had to do, which is like be a free agent destination or a trade destination where guys want to come there and choosing the right guys and making the right deals. They've never really done that. They've always been more about, we're going to draft these guys. Like this is the franchise that drafted Ginobili and Parker, late and turn them into stars. Like it's looks like a different rebuild this time compared to that. And so you're kind of betting on something you haven't seen yet, but Wemby is just so good and they have the assets that it's hard not to buy into it.
Yeah. And like I said, like if we all believe that Wemby is like this generational star, then it doesn't take much, to get over these other teams. Like it won't. Because like we said, like the Rockets don't have the star. The Mavs are extremely theoretical over the next 5 years. Denver, they've got some issues. And so it's, really the only team that is like would be really scary to say to any of these three teams is the Thunder, just because
Well,
like they have it all together.
You could even look at, let's just say they trade for Fox. In 2 seasons, Wemby will be 23, Fox will be 29.
Mhm.
That pair, 23-year-old Wemby, 29-year-old Fox, is probably going to be better than Luka plus 35-year-old Kyrie, and is probably going to be better than Jokic and Jamal Murray.
Mhm.
And that's De'Aaron Fox, like a one-time All-Star, and that's all it would take. And that pair
Totally.
already seems like they would be better in a couple seasons than those guys. So I think that's why. Like it really would just take one of those deals. Now maybe Fox isn't the perfect piece, and so maybe like you're saying, they should wait for whoever that is going to be. You know, whether it's like if the Phoenix things blows up and it's Devin Booker or something like that. But yeah, they're just in a great position right now. Any team that was going to draft Wemby was going to be in a great position. But they
totally.
still feel like they could do anything. Like they have really good flexibility.
Mm-hmm. Also, like going through this exercise just shows me like what a ridiculous position the Thunder are in, though. You know, having all the picks and like having the level of players that they have throughout the roster, and still having like guys to develop and everything, and having a coach and a GM in place that like you completely trust. Like is Denver even going to have the same coach and GM in 5 years? You know, I think that we feel pretty confident that like really the only way that the Thunder would have a different coach and GM is like if those guys decided to walk away. You know, I think that like Denver could blow up. You know, the Mavericks I think could blow up too. You know, San Antonio is stable for sure, but like that's something like the Thunder have, like just from top down, is like they have stability, they have the draft picks, they have the star player, they have another emerging all-star in J-Dub, they have a guy that we think would have been an all-star this year in Chet if he stays healthy. Like honestly, like the only thing that worries me about the Thunder's future is Chet's health, you know, which is like not something to sweep under the rug. But like that to me is like a big deal. But also we've seen this team also be dominant without him, which is wild. Like, would it surprise you if like Chet couldn't play, which I don't think is going to be the reality, but let's just like hypothetically say like Chet couldn't play, everybody else is healthy. Like I still think the Thunder could win the West.
I do. It would be, I wouldn't feel as confident about it. I mean, a lot of it depends on if is Dallas going to be somewhat healthy by the playoffs? Yeah. And assuming that like Jamal Murray is healthy, if those two things happen, then it would be like a coin flip for me. So I think either of those two teams could do it. And I also could imagine a scenario where like a Memphis or a Houston just gets hot for a series and could beat that Thunder team. But yes, they still would be talented enough. They would just be clumped closer to those other teams.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is why I think like next week, the trade deadline is so important for the West, because like after the Thunder, I don't know who I really believe. I mean, it changes week to week who I think is like the second best team. And like a team has like a real opportunity to make some moves and become like that next team, you know? Yeah. And so I'm really curious to see what happens at the trade deadline.
Jalen Johnson's out for this season.
Oh, that stinks.
That sucks. He's on my fantasy team.
Yeah, that really stinks. He was having a great year. Brother. Well, dang.
Well, dang.
That Hawks team has been fun. They've been fun to watch. Shoulder injury. Poor
Slam
guy.
Jam's going to be back this week.
We're going to be back. Yeah, we'll be back talking Celtics. Should be fun. Talk some pre-trade deadline stuff as well. So it should be cool. Next week, during the trade deadline day, all day long, we will be broadcasting live on the Athletic NBA Daily's YouTube feed all day. And so we're going to have a ton of guests popping in and out of this show. Like we have like all the No Dunks guys are going to stop by. James Edwards, Christian Clark, John Krasinski, Slater, Marcus Thompson is coming by. There's a ton of people that are going to be popping in to I think Spike Eskin's going to stop by for a little bit too. Like, there's a lot of like really fun. Yosi Goslin is going to come by as well. Mike Prada, Katie Heindel. So tons of people in and out all day long for the trade deadline day. So our guy Keith Parrish stopping by as well. So tons of people going to be popping in and out of that YouTube feed. We'll just be live all day. We'll be live reacting to trades that happen. We'll just be hanging out, getting people's thoughts on their teams and thoughts on a bunch of different stuff. So be sure to one, subscribe to the Athletic NBA Daily's YouTube channel. You can watch Slam and Jam there, but also tune in on trade deadline day because we'll be live all day long. So looking forward to that. Okay, Al, anything else before we go? Thunder have the Warriors tonight. Steph is supposed to play, according to reports.
Okay.
Let me see if he's on the injury report yet, because that will significantly matter with what happens in this game tonight with the Thunder. They haven't submitted. Great. Dort's back. I'll say that. Dort's back. Really, the only guys that are out currently are Chet, which we're getting close to Chet Watch. Cannot wait for Chet Watch to officially begin. And then AJ, and then Topic and Dylan Jones is with the G League. But everybody else is available. So
Nice.
So we'll see. The Warriors are still... Draymond was listed as day-to-day yesterday. And so I'm interested to see what his status is. That obviously matters a lot. Kuminga is still out. But the Warriors have been a mess. This should be a game that, especially with the Thunder having some time off and getting to practice and all that, like they should be fresh and ready to go. And it always feels good to beat the Warriors. So hopefully they can do that tonight.
Andrew, I think you should come out to Portland. I think we could do a live pod based on how many Thunder fans were at the Blazers game. It was crazy.
You think so? Yeah, tell me about that.
I saw a dog shirt.
Really?
Just in my section. I didn't have to go anywhere. He was just walking out. I don't know who it was. I couldn't get to him to say hi. But yeah, the section that was behind the Thunder's bench all the way up.
Yeah.
Like when anything happened with the Thunder, it was loud. Now I think part of that is because the Blazers suck. And so, it's probably not as many Blazers fans as would be normal. Yeah. They're not as loud, maybe as normal, but still it was louder than it's ever been for a Thunder team.
Wow.
I think we could do a live pod. I bet we could get like 20 people.
God, that would be
Set
amazing.
the bar low, but I bet we could get 20 people.
I'm going to fly up there. We're going to do live pod. I still need to get you to Vegas so that we can do live DTD, live Slam and Jam at Summer League.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't tell you. I went to a Blazers game, and in the fourth quarter, the guy directly behind me tapped me on my shoulder and listened to Down to Dunk.
Wow. Weird.
Yeah. I think he had heard my voice just talking to my friend and eventually said hi. He was right behind me the entire game. It's crazy. They're everywhere.
Dude, dunkers all over the world, man. It's awesome.
Dunkers all over the world.
Man, that's so cool. That is so cool. I love hearing that. All right, Al. Anything else before we go?
I'm about to be picking up Vít Krejci on my fantasy team.
Ooh, Vít. He plays a lot for them. He plays a lot for them.
He's going to be playing a lot for the rest of the season, apparently.
Yeah. He was closing for them last night in a very close game with the Rockets.
That's crazy.
So get yourself some Vít stock.
As good as the setup is for OKC, another one of the impressive things about Presti is just that all of those guys are somehow still in the league.
Yeah, it's true.
Jerry is still on a team. Vít Krejci is still on a team. Ty Jerome on a team and doing well.
Ty Jerome.
Svi Mykhailiuk still on a team. All these guys from other than Darius Bazley are pretty much still on a team in the NBA.
And Poku.
Oh, okay. I forgot about him.
Forgot him. How could you forget about Poku? Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, the guys we were least excited about are the guys that are still in the NBA.
There's definitely some truth to that. That's funny. All right. Please be sure that if you're watching live, we got a lot of people watching live here right now. Please be sure to like the video. Would appreciate that. If you're listening via podcast, if you would please just share the show with a friend. I know that like you can't just walk around Oklahoma City and not like talk about the Thunder. And so if you're talking to anybody about the Thunder, please mention Down to Dunk to them. Also, it would mean a lot to me if you would leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Make sure that you like hit 5 stars, but then also write something. That would mean a lot to me if you would do that today. Would very much appreciate that. My bosses look at every single review, by the way, and so it's just nice to have 5-star reviews that are nice like that. You can also leave one for Slam and Jam as well, and we'll read it on the show. Hope you guys are doing great, and we'll talk to you guys again on Friday.